A very warm welcome to all of our attendees this morning. Let's move straight into our Toolbox talk for this morning, risk assessment. Now, currently, the understanding or the definition of risk in the Occupational Health and Safety Act is the probability that injury or damage will occur. So it's very basic. That's the current meaning and definition that you will find in the current OSH Act. However, there is the proposed amended review. Now, this is the amended Occupational Health and Safety Act bill. And you might have followed this on social media, whether you are following SIOSH, whether you are following the Department of Labor. And the Chief Inspector, Mr. Tibozana, gave a brilliant bit of a PowerPoint presentation last week on understanding what we are set to see in the future from the Occupational Health and Safety Act. And one of the proposed amended reviews was the meaning of risk, or the definition of risk. And we can see it here means the probability that personal injury, illness, or death of the employee or any other person or damage to property will occur. So you can see this is a lot broader, a lot more a necessary update, because obviously this is what we understood risk to be before in any case. But there were some cutting corners, basically looking at their risk assessment only in terms of the injury or damage that will occur, and identifying it only for their personal companies or their own scope of work with the people involved. But if you take a look at the proposed amended review, the probability that personal injury, yes, that is personal injury, illness, or death of the employee performing the work or any other person. Well, that is because the work that you are performing can affect others. So the proposed changes, which is coming out, is going to affect every single company, every employer, as well as every employee. And you'll know this because when we take a look at the understanding of the current Occupational Health and Safety Act, every single person is going to be involved in the risk mitigation part, or the risk management part of the company's health and safety management system. And so a lot of emphasis was really put on risk assessment, risk management, and then a safe system, or a health and safety system, instead of just a health and safety policy. And so we are still commenting on this bill. We are still fine-tuning it, if I can put it that way. But it came across last week that this was pretty much set in stone, according to the Department of Labor. This is really what they are pushing to go ahead with. And they are asking for comments on it, not really necessarily changes on it, but just fine-tuning what is already there. So because this came across, and this is my opinion of what I heard from the Chief Inspector, and this is basically the feeling that I got. So if you're a health and safety professional out there, if you're a plumber out there that got involved with listening to Tibozana, maybe you got the same feeling. But then we want to ask each and every one of you, if you are a plumber, have you read the proposed new amendments to the Occupational Health and Safety Act? You can find it on the Department of Labor's website. You can also find it on SIOSH's website, and you will find it if you email us, chris@ohss.co.za or safety@iopsa.org. We will send you through a copy. We've also got a copy from a very well-known presenter, Ken Annandale. Many of you do probably follow him if you're into the health and safety side, where he gave us a little bit of a breakdown of the current understanding of the OSH Act, and then next to it, the proposed amendments. It's not 100% updated, but it does give you a very good idea of where the Department of Labor is moving toward in the health and safety sector. And so that is why we needed to discuss risk assessment today, because the whole basis of a management system for health and safety rests on the correct assessment of risk, the correct identification of hazards, and then combining those two into a risk management plan as well as a risk assessment. So let us take a look. What is a risk assessment? Well, again, this proposed change or amended bill gave us a very nice detailed understanding, which we only initially had from safety management systems like your OSHA 18001 or your ISO 45001 systems. But a risk assessment should mean the process of evaluating the risk to an employee's health and safety from workplace hazards, and is a systematic assessment of all aspects of works that considers a complete hazard identification, the identification of all who may be affected by that hazard, how the person is affected, the analysis and evaluation of the actual risk, and then finally, the prioritization of risk, meaning we always want to focus on what is the highest risk, how can we get this low, and we've totally lost reasonably practical. You'll notice that we haven't even said reasonably practical in these definitions. Why is that? Well, that is going to be falling away. What does that mean? Do we actually understand the severity or the weightiness of what these proposed amendments mean for us as individuals, as company owners, as self-employed persons, as business owners, CEOs? And again, we're talking to CEOs and business owners as those who are responsible and liable for health and safety within a company. But the risk assessment affects every single person. And so every person must be involved in ensuring their health and safety to the workplace is adequate. And so you will see that the reasonable practical side is falling away. It now means that you will ensure. In other words, you have no option. You have to ensure that you have a risk assessment. Now, to be honest, and this is something that scared me actually after listening to some stories about why the chief inspector mentioned some of these things, is that some still do not have risk management plans. Some are not taking into consideration the health effects on their risk assessment. In fact, we had the ergonomics regulations changed, and that wasn't included into our risk assessment. Now, when we perform risk assessments, we are doing it this way. And yes, it's because we're going according to the ISO 45001 management system. We're trying to integrate our clients into that, and some are bucking against it, and we do not understand why. Well, in future, this is going to change. It's going to become a mandatory thing for any company. So if you're a business owner and you need to know more, please get in touch with us or get a hold of a copy of that OHS amendment bill. If you need to understand what it means, we can assist you with that, but we are developing a course on the final or the completed amended bill. When that comes out, we will take it, we'll unpack it for you, and we'll find out exactly what it means for you as a plumber. Now, moving forward, you're constantly performing your same risk assessment. So why is it important that we are discussing the changes to risk assessment now? Well, as I mentioned, from the feel that we got, it sounds like this is going to be the changes. There might be small adjustments to this, but they're not going to adjust the entire way of thinking. So this new Amendment Act is probably 90% there or 80% there, with a few amendments going to be made. But the gist was that this is what is coming. And since this is what is coming, why not get prepared now? Why wait for the OSH Act to come out as amended? Why wait for it to become mandatory and then start? Well, some say, well, if it's not mandatory now, then it's a grudge purchase. We don't have to do it right now. Well, to be honest, as a health and safety professional, we always thought this was how it was being done. And we realize now that it was not. But getting to the crux of why we are discussing risk assessment with you as plumbers today, it's because a plumber is not just a plumber. And we've heard so many stories. We read one on social media just recently from a very well-known plumber, Mr. Dean Kane. I don't know if you're listening in or some of you know Mr. Dean Kane. He wrote a very interesting article about someone who was in a meeting and stated that the plumber didn't really have a voice in that meeting because he was just a plumber. He just, wasted his time in sewerage all day. He was just a plumber. And that got me thinking after reading his story. It got me thinking after speaking to IOPSA, is this really the view of plumbers out there? Well, if it is, we need your help to change that, because you are the professional in your field. So we rely on you as the professionals to educate and train us on what could go wrong. And this is the reason why we are discussing risk assessment with you today. And yes, as a Toolbox talk, you must be reminded about the health and safety effects of the work on you as an individual, so that when you go throughout your week, you are trained to understand that you could be affected by hazards. There's dangers out there, and there's the source of the danger. You need to identify that. And then you need to know what is the probability you could get injured. What is the probability you could get ill or damage property or even die because of the scope of work you're performing? And that's really the goal of a Toolbox talk. So let's take that goal and apply it to risk assessment, the changes coming, and the fact that you are not just a plumber. So let's think about this. And this is probably something that you would say to someone who says you're just a plumber. Imagine not having clean running water. Well, you're not going to last or live very long without clean running water. We need water because water is life. And not just water, we need clean water. We can't go for many weeks without water. Electricity, yes, we're not, happy about it when load shedding happens, and with new load shedding schedules being set. We've already had some yesterday. All of us are upset about it, but you could pretty much get through your day, right? Now think about having a blocked drain for a couple of hours. Think about that lasting a couple of days or a couple of weeks. Can you think of the health impact? That all ties to hazards and risks, you see, because it has an impact on an individual's health or the individual's safety. Let me ask you, plumbers, is there a risk of an incorrectly installed geyser? So if the geyser is incorrectly installed, is the only risk that you're not going to get a COC? Or is there other safety factors? Is there other health factors? What if the geyser is running at an incorrect temperature? Or we've just had the Legionnaire's disease toolbox talk, which told us that if our geyser is not running at an optimal temperature of at least 60 degrees Celsius for a certain period of time, it is not capable of destroying or killing that bacteria, which means if we have a geyser that is running at 40 to between 20 and 50 degrees Celsius, you have optimal growth conditions for the Legionnaire's disease. And there are other types of bacteria that live in water that could also affect you. So do we appreciate the chance of death through contaminated water? You see, contaminated water affects us in many different ways. And so we need to fully understand the risks and hazards, not just to yourself as a plumber, but please as professionals, and we view you as professionals, and we want to get the changed view of others saying you're just a plumber to saying, wow, these are people who bring life through fresh water into our homes and buildings and take death out through waste and sewage. So you are protecting both our lives, our health, and our safety by ensuring your tasks and all projects that you perform are being done correctly, which means you obviously want to have a plumber that is licensed and trained. So nobody wants to have an uneducated electrician, but why do they feel fine with using an uneducated plumber? Well, we need to change this view because the risk is very high. The source of danger is there, but we need to ask you to assist us. And we're going to ask you a few questions now. What risks do you see every day? And then based on those risks, and maybe take a few seconds to think about some of the risks you face every single day. The risk of falling from heights because you have to work on top of a roof, on top of a ladder, on top of a scaffold. Perhaps the risk of an exploding geyser that is incorrectly installed, or the pressure buildup of these hydroboil systems. What about the risk of someone who is not trained in solar powered geysers? Yes, you're a plumber, but you need specific training on solar powered geysers. Have you gone through that training? And what is the risk if you have not gone through that training? Does it only affect a COC? Does it only affect bottom line, what we can charge our client? Or are we really focusing on what it could do or how it could affect us as a plumber, as an individual. Are we focusing on the health and safety aspect? Now, do you have a risk management plan? Is there a plan set out on how you are going to manage the risk for your entire company? So every task. Do you have the procedure for identification of hazards? Do you have a procedure for how you are going to perform a risk assessment? What about the procedure for checking the effectiveness of the controls? Once you've done the risk assessment, let's say, for instance, you need to get a COC. That's one of the checks. If you have a COC, you know that your geyser complies. But do you leave it there? It's now signed off by someone else. They've put their name on it, and so it relieves you of your responsibility. Well, should that be the view? Because now we're talking about, well, just a plumber, because if we've got a COC, then we don't really need your help. Well, that's not the view at all. In fact, we still need your help. We still need to know how these things should be maintained, because plumbing should be maintained. So what is the risk of plumbing that is not maintained correctly? What is the risks or hazards of plumbing that is not correctly used? See, these are all things that you can assist us with in knowing and understanding, training us and guiding and evaluating what the risks are. And then as risk assessors or trained risk management personnel, what we want to do is then take your knowledge and experience and combine it with the health and safety aspect to make a safer environment for everyone, not just the employee themselves, but anybody else who may be affected by what that employee does. Then what about your continuous-based risk management program? And we discussed this also in our Toolbox talks, your daily safe task instructions. Are you identifying new hazards? Perhaps you're doing a daily safe task instruction, or you're doing a weekly planned task observation where you also identify the risks and hazards of the individual. Perhaps you're doing monthly inspections for job hazard analysis on a monthly basis. Then you're doing your 3-monthly review of issue-based risk assessments. You're doing your 6-monthly review of all of your risk management plan. And then you're doing your annual review of your overall baseline risk assessment profile for your company. And these are basic. This is mandatory. This is the minimum that we should be doing. And you think, wow, that's a lot. Well, that is still going to be added onto in the future. And that is why it's so important for us to get on board now, get into a process of doing it, get into that habit and rhythm and that routine of daily checking our risk. And if something changed, what is being done? What is the management system for identifying a new hazard or a new risk to the scope? What is your change management? Where do you go to from there? How is it adjusted? How is it added? How is it involved with the employees? And how are they made to understand everything we've just spoken about? And this is also something very, very important that is coming out in the new amended bill. You see, to train an employee is one thing, telling them is one thing, but making sure they actually understand is another level, isn't it? You might think to yourself, well, how are we going to achieve this? It just really seems impossible. Well, we are going to try our best from our IOPSA side to assist you in doing this. And if you've taken the COVID awareness course, we want to design courses very similar to that you and your employees can run from your smartphone based on very short, simple sessions of risk management, and then taking a look at the overall risk management scheme of plumbing. So perhaps we're not going to make it company specific unless you would like to pay for all those hours they're going to designing the course. But as IOPSA, we want to do free courses that affect all plumbers. So would you like it if we did that? And can you help us to achieve this? Well, what are we doing? OHSS Consulting would like to design a course of plumbing risk management. So this course will be designed to help you, the plumber, know and understand the hazards and risks associated with your plumbing scope of work. But we want to take it step by step. We want to look at not just plumbing as a whole. We want to look at plumbing in private homes. We want to look at plumbing in schools, plumbing in commercial buildings, plumbing in construction sites, and design courses around maybe saying the same things, but identifying the hazards correctly in all of those environments. And then everything in between that as well. And make this accessible to the end user as well. Something that you could give them as a link to say, we've done your installation. Here is a link on the risk management profile of what we have done for you. So if you'd like this, please reach out. What we need to know is we would like to design as many part series, as many as we need in order to cover what we want to achieve and each and every person that might be involved, from clients to end users, to employers, to employees, and anyone else in between that as well. Find out as many persons that need to understand this. So currently we are working with IOPSA and other professional companies that give us some advice on all the facets of the plumbing world, but we want to hear from you. So please, we are asking you, tell us what you have seen on site that could assist us in understanding your risks and hazards that you face. What would you like the course to provide? And what hazards and risks have you identified that you could assist us in implementing in this course? And obviously in the next 2 months, when we hear about the final outcome of the amended bill, and maybe a few months later after that, once it's promulgated and it's now set in force, we can have this course already designed for you and those who might be involved. Now, talking about courses, just as a reminder, we want to keep our Toolbox talk short and sweet, but if you have not had a chance to do the compliance officers course, or even the basic COVID awareness course for all employees and employers, please take this opportunity, send us a WhatsApp message or an SMS message on 071-875-2070. We'll send you the link to those courses. You can also email me, chris@ohss.co.za. Please remember, this is a free course for all IOPSA members, and you'll be able to do the awareness course and then move on to the 4-part compliance officers course. This is very important because all companies must have a compliance officers course. And this course is going to be designed for future courses so that we can take risk management and design it in a very similar way. So again, if you want to get in touch with us, if you're a health and safety professional and you have your input on what plumbing should consider in terms of health and safety, please let us know. safety@iopsa.org, info@ohss.co.za. There's our cell phone number for WhatsApping, or even if you want to get a hold of me personally, that's chris@ohss.co.za. So we're going to look forward to seeing you next week on contract versus private work. We want to say thank you very much to all of you for taking the time out this morning.